This is Travis Tritt. He's a former outlaw country singer, very popular, who, in a desperate attempt to stay relevant, has released a new gospel album. Does the man who is legendary for singing songs like "Here's a Quarter, Call Someone Who Cares" really the guy we need singing songs of faith in the church? Let's talk about how this breaks the church and what we can do to fix it. This is Church is Lame.
Travis Tritt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that I have a low opinion of country, because that should be obvious from the look on my face.
Right. Well, I think it's safe to say that neither of us, like, country music is not our first love.
No.
Right.
No.
And certainly I've got a little bit of an appreciation for it. I lived down in the South for a while. My dad was a big country music fan. So there are parts of country music I enjoy. So Travis Tritt firmly establishes himself in kind of like this group of country singers that were kind of like the Harley Davidson crew of the time, you know. Beards and we don't care about the man and we can do whatever we want. And, you know, we don't care if we offend your mama. And I'm just kind of wondering how this person becomes gospel music's new poster boy, you know?
Yeah, like when I saw this headline, it was hard for me not to immediately think about, Kanye,
Oh, wow.
because like he was going to do his gospel album, and it's like it's just like this trendy thing. I mean, it feels like it felt like a cash grab when he did it, and it doesn't feel like it's much different than when Travis Tritt's doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess we should start by saying that there has always been this kind of long-standing, loose relationship between what we traditionally call like white gospel music, not black gospel church music, but white gospel music and country music, right? They both kind of come up with very close branches in the musical family tree. They both kind of share those roots of like, bluegrass, and they share a lot of country and a little bit of jazz in there as well. So musically speaking, they're certainly related cousins. But obviously, as time goes on and country music becomes the money-making mega machine that it now is, optics get involved. And people in the country music world do not want to be tethered to a message that may cause issues in the future, right? So this decade, it may be cool to be a Christian. Next decade, it may not be. And so it's hard for a lot of artists and record companies to want to plant their flag and say, yeah, go ahead and put out a strong Christian ethos in your music. Although right now we are in one of those periods where it's okay to do that.
Yeah, and like right now, like there's a very strong kind of reactionary vibe that's just kind of sweeping evangelicals across the country, and so this just kind of feels like some of that. It's like, oh, Travis Tritt can have his faith, and I don't know what his faith even really is. If
Right.
he's going to believe any of these things that he's singing. And I'm not going to criticize him for that. But like we've seen that the Christian and the country music industry are incestuous cousins in Nashville.
Yeah.
And like they are both nothing but money grubbing whores. So
don't hold back, Mark. How do you really feel?
Yeah.
Nice. There's some hard truth there. Yeah.
And so it's just like the part of me that wants to give Travis Tritt the benefit of the doubt as a musician, that he wants to explore something new, is really at odds with the part of me that just sees the filthy underbelly of this kind of music industry.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to put a link to the actual article, because in the article there is a video interview. And in the video interview, the interviewer asks him, like, 30 years you've been in the industry, why now? Which I think is a perfectly sensible question to ask. And the best thing he could come up with was the timing was never right. Right? That's another way of saying, there's a record label who told me I shouldn't go this way. There were demographics, there were sales analysis charts that told me this was dangerous waters to be in. Is it now that I'm a nobody with nothing to lose, I can finally show that I have a spiritual side? Or is it now that I'm a nobody with nothing to lose, it'd be really nice to make some bank? And the problem is there's no way to know. Like, it doesn't matter what Travis says. Like, we are all reasonably smart people, and there's no way to take the money out of the equation of motive.
Yeah, when you're saying the timing was never right,
Yeah,
like to express your faith. I mean, is that what you're telling me? That is that your honest excuse?
right.
You know,
The
I'm
time,
doing this now because the timing was just never right before to admit liking Jesus. It's like it sounds so horribly disingenuous.
it is. I mean, it's really just code for, there was a time in my career where my
Mhm.
record sales were here. And if I would have put out a gospel album right at that moment, my record sales would have tanked to here. And
Yeah.
that's the only way I can hear it. And I'm like you. I have zero interest tonight in questioning Travis Tritt's faith, right? I have no interest
Mhm.
in doing that. The question becomes for me in church's lame and what we do here, does him doing this now help or hurt a church that already looks to many to be nothing but money grubbing whores, to put it the way you just put it so eloquently, right? And then on the part of the church, like, so okay, on the one hand there's Travis Tritt and how he either helps or hurts the church, but then there's the church itself. And what is it about the Christian music industry, especially the older white gospel music industry,
Mhm.
that will just accept anybody who used to be a celebrity of any kind? I swear to God, like, if Billy Crystal chose to make a gospel music album, like, Gaither Music would be just like, totally. We would love it if you would come and do the Fernando accent and make a gospel music album. There's just something about that demographic that will just take in any opportunity to sell a CD?
And I appreciate you used a very current and relevant example of
Yeah.
Billy Crystal.
You look marvelous. It is better to look good than to feel good.
But when you said Billy Crystal, that was the voice that immediately came to mind, you know?
Exactly. The other one I always remember is he used to do a sketch with somebody else. Like, you like when you take a statue of the Eiffel Tower and you shove it up your nose. That's so those are my two big memories of Billy Crystal. Of course, who's had a very long and wonderful career in comedy way back before SNL. So this
Mhm.
this is not raking Billy Crystal across the coals because he's definitely a pleasant nostalgia in my memory.
Of course, I mean, I think the bigger joke is that, of course, Billy Crystal is Jewish, so for him to do a gospel album would be quite out of place,
Exactly
you know?
right.
I don't know how many articles I've seen, like, I mean, written by, the likes of Christianity Today, Christian Century, Sojourners, Christian Science Monitor, whoever,
Yeah.
that will talk about how Christians will just kind of jump out, or more to the point, evangelicals will just kind of jump out and consume anything that's spat at them,
Yeah.
my tone might sound insulting, and it is kind of meant to be.
I got that.
Um,
Yeah.
um, I mean, just because, like, so many of like the movies that we would see like on Pure Flix, and
Yeah.
so many of like Christian albums can be just really mockeries of the genres that they're doing.
Mhm.
It's like Christians will kind of leap out and consume this poorly done media,
Yep.
and they'll do it in record numbers.
Yes,
it,
absolutely.
it just appeals to me, like, as somebody who like likes playing music,
Mhm.
that evangelicals on the whole just kind of hate what I do and don't have any respect for it.
Yeah.
People like Kanye West and Travis Tritt, maybe they should get together and do an album. They can call it, Kanye Tritty. Um, j-
Like,
uh,
they are the World Gospel Edition.
yeah,
Oh
it'd
man.
be horrifying.
That's
Um,
that's to put it mildly.
yeah. So it just seems like, whenever some new, I shouldn't say new person, Travis Tritt is not new,
Right.
but like somebody whose career has basically come to its autumn, coming out and doing this. It seems like that's why somebody's going to jump on this, and they're going to publish it, and they're going to distribute it, just because they know that they can make money off of an audience that has a reputation for not being the most discerning, of having the most discerning taste.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, and I'm not even sure that I'm concerned so much with taste, right? People have bad taste over a multitude of things. I am just wondering how Christians keep a straight face when they say it's not about the money, and how they expect anybody not to roll their eyes in the biggest eye roll ever when Christians say it's
Mhm.
not about the money. It's about glorifying God.
Yeah, yeah, I think you bring up a good point because like there's certain news channels like CBN, for instance, right? Like there is just no shortage of headlines that they laud Christians who are rich and wealthy and famous.
Yeah.
I would say in that order. Like if they're rich first, then they get lauded, and then if they happen to be famous, like, oh, we know who Kirk Cameron is, so we're just gonna like publish whatever he's talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll go raid
like
any library he wants to go raid and shut it down for the day.
the criticisms of evangelicals having kind of a love of money isn't just us. I mean, there's a wide criticism all over the Christian and non-Christian world of that tendency. Yeah. So it's like maybe like we're being too cynical about what Travis Tritt's trying to do, but we have a reason why we kind of come to the door with that cynicism.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is like I chose this story because I knew it was going
Mhm.
to be a fun distraction from the heartbreaking things and infuriating things we typically talk about, right? So this was going to be a fun opportunity just to kind of talk about like this guy who was well beyond relevance, taking his last shot in the gospel music thing.
Mhm.
Fine. But I think this is a great example of modern thinking gone wrong in the church, right? And the church would have you believe that modern thinking gone wrong in the church is things like the LGBTQ
Mhm.
and women in leadership, right? And we're still dealing with racial reconciliation, right? We're still talking about should we take down monuments from the Civil War of our heroes who tried to keep slaves, right? These are things we still think are worthwhile fights, and like this inability for the church to see the way they let money cloud and distort and obfuscate their every motive to the point of young people not even wanting to bother with it anymore is just kind of astounding to me that you kind of that they cannot see both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I mean, and at least Travis Tritt is a musician. I mean, he makes music for a living. I mean, that's his thing. He plays music.
Exactly. Let's be clear.
You know,
He is a capitalist whose vehicle of capitalism is music.
yeah. So it's a little bit of a different situation than like famous pastor X
Yeah.
writing 10 different self-help books, which are all the same book.
Exactly right.
I'm not going to quote any book titles from somebody who has or hasn't worked for Hillsong, but they're out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah, and so like I can at least give him. It's like he wants to do a project. I can support that.
Hmm.
It isn't as transparently money grubbing as some things that we've seen.
Yeah.
So I would kind of put that like in the is this lame category. Then it's
Oh,
like
that would be an interesting question. So, viewers and listeners out there, let us know what you think. Is this lame or are we overreacting?
I mean, we are good at overreacting.
That is true. So let's bring this bird in for a landing here and talk about fixing this. I think I've been on the tear on a very similar theme lately. That I think the fix to this is we don't raise up artists anymore. We just kind of say they've got the gift, let it set them free, right? We just kind of we find the ones who have that special X factor, right?
Yeah.
And we say, hey, we can sell 1 million units off that person. Let's get them in the studio or let's get them on tour or whatever, right? So we don't raise up artists anymore. We pull from them, extract from them every bit of music and artistry they have, and then we spit them out. And that's what the industry does. And I think the fix for this is raising up artists the same way we should be raising up pastors, which is through heavy, heavy, heavy discipleship and heavy, heavy, heavy apprenticeship. Those two things together. People should start at the bottom, sweeping floors, cleaning paintbrushes, changing guitar strings, whatever the bottom is in your industry, you go through that. And when you're proven that you are detail oriented and focused and committed to the cause, then you get to do the guitar setups, right? And you get to make
Mhm.
sure that the battery is charged, and you get to hand him his guitar on stage or whatever, right? And then once you've proven you're good with that, maybe you get to be not the session band in the session, but maybe you get to be part of the band that does the demo for the band that's going to be the session band of the session, right? And once you're good at that, maybe you get to be part of the songwriting room. You know what I mean? But there's an
Yeah.
apprenticeship process that should happen. And with Christian artists, it should have a Christian focus, right? So it's not just about being a guitar player, a musician, a singer, a keyboard player, but there's also the biblical understanding part of it. And that's where we all kind of go, this Travis Tritt thing is a joke because he could care less about what the Bible says because he's never preached it a day in his life, right? And I guess and so we need to be raising up Christian musicians in the same way, with a heart not just for the music, but with a heart for the message and a heart for the sheep that they're supposed to shepherd. End of rant.
Yeah, I think that's all insanely good stuff.
Thank you. It
I mean,
happens once
like,
in a while.
yeah, like because and the only thing I could really add to that, or to try to cast it alongside, just to say is that the Christian, I say the Christian music industry, and I'm talking about the contemporary Christian music industry that's based out of Nashville,
Yeah.
has for decades been just horrible. There were musicians that I listened to in high school, for instance, that had been horribly treated by their labels.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be Christian organizations. And there are other acts, I should say, musicians that, try to get into the, music industry, like who are good musicians and very well-meaning and honest and earnest, who get crushed
Yeah.
by that. I mean, and in a weird example, would be like Jessica Simpson, right? Like
Mm.
she wanted to do nothing but like, Michael W. Smith, praise and worship stuff.
CCM
And
stuff.
she
Yeah.
yeah, and she was basically kicked out of the industry by people that were like, "Yeah, we can't really sell you because your boobs are too big.
Right.
You're gonna distract all the boys." So it's like the Christian music industry is horrible. And so, if there are any Christians listening to this who know people in the industry who can affect it, like, hey, like it's maybe something we can focus on is not supporting the industry so much and trying to find a way for musicians who are good and who have a good message to get out there without this ball and chain in Nashville behind them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is Church's Lame. You may have watched this episode and you may think to yourself, man, Scott and Mark, they really hate the church. Nothing could be further from the church. Truth. Wow, words is hard. Nothing could be further from the truth. We love the church. We are participants in the church. We are the participants in the big church. We want to see God glorified and Jesus' name spread to all corners of the earth. We just think churches, and in this case, the Christian music industry, makes that job harder than it needs to be. And so we collect stories of this kind of stupidity and put them all in one place so that when churches ask the question, what are we doing wrong? Here you go. You're welcome.
And with that, go in peace and serve the Lord. And hey, if you liked this episode and you want to get more of it, you're not going to get my sexy COVID voice, but if you go check out the playlist, Christian celebrities, you can find more on topics like this.